The movie begins with Bong Gil, an apprentice to a renowned shaman named Hua Rim, on an airplane heading to Los Angeles. The child of a wealthy American businessman, Park Ji-young, has fallen ill, and since medical science has failed him, he resolves to the supernatural. This pair, Bong Gil and Hua Rim, are led by Park Ji-young to the hospital. The desperate man seeks their help as he knows Hua Rim possesses special gifts, and he hopes that she can use it to provide solutions to his problem. They arrive in Los Angeles and are driven directly to the hospital by Mr. Park. Upon arrival, they meet Mr. Park's wife, who is quite skeptical about spiritual matters. However, she reluctantly allows them to see her son, who is admitted to one of the hospital rooms. Her newborn son is mysteriously ill, and despite extensive medical treatment, the doctors have been unable to find a cure up until this moment. This has caused her to seek help elsewhere despite her skepticism. As Hua Rim begins to examine the infant, she feels a dark energy hovering all over the child. She calls the two parents aside, and she informs the couple that it is the ancestors of the child that are responsible for the infant's strange and concerning predicament. The couple are shocked by this revelation, and just stare in utter disbelief. Later, Hua Rim and Bong Gil go to the house of Park to discuss more on the subject. Park explains to the two that the firstborns in his family have always had strange misfortune befall them. He further explains that his father was paralyzed, and his older brother, upon hearing the news, took his life while in a mental institution. Park also reveals that his wife had had several miscarriages before having this boy, who's now constantly sick. This series of unfortunate events has made Mr. Park, a man who always ignored the supernatural and its existence, begin to question reality. Hua Rim sympathizes with Mr. Park. However, there is no denying the fact that he needs urgent help if his family must overcome this prevailing trial. Also, this urgent help might involve her making her way down to Korea, with an expert tag, along to investigate the grave spot of their ancestors and its surrounding area. Hua Rim diagnoses Mr. Park's son's illness, and terms it a grave calling. According to the plot, their child is entangled in a critical situation of being haunted by Mr. Park's grandfather's ghost. The reason was that his grandfather had been buried in a place that was not right for him. Hua Rim has a solution. However, they urgently need to relocate or cremate his grandfather's remains as soon as possible, but she informs the man that she is incapable of doing this by herself. Hua Rim needs assistance, and this assistance will not come cheap. It is going to be very expensive to carry out the whole process. Mr. Park is desperate to save his child, and so he agrees. He is willing to make the funds available, no matter the cost. The scene transitions to Korea, and there we see a man named Kim, who is a geomancer. He is an aged feng shui master. In simple terms, this is a person who has the gift of using energy forces to harmonize individuals with their surrounding environment. We also see his colleague Yong Gun, a mortician and owner of a mortuary house. A troubled family comes to them for help. The spirit of a late family member of theirs has been causing unrest among them in a dream. Kim does a brief examination of the grave and then reveals to the family the cause of their troubles. He says that the old woman is furious at her grandson for wielding her teeth. She would only finally be at peace when her grandson returns the old woman's dentures. The little boy Sang-hyun, who is in possession of his grandmother's false teeth, admits to it. He claims he misses his grandmother greatly and just wants something to remind him of her always, something to feign her presence. It's an emotional moment, and the little boy is led to tears as he struggles to let go. Kim tries to reassure him that he doesn't need to keep possession of any of his grandmother's belongings to feel her presence. He tells him that she will always be with him no matter what. It's a somber moment, and everyone tries to comfort the grieving child. That night, Kim and Yong-gun chat while they have dinner. Just then, Hua Rim and Bong Gil come to visit. Kim and Yong-gun welcome the two, and they all exchange pleasantries. Hua Rim then begins to tell Kim all about her new client, Park Ji-young, and his strange family. Hua Rim informs Kim briefly about Park's troubles with his son and how all of the misfortune that has befallen their family. It can be traced back to Korea, where the grave of their late relative is. This is where Kim and Yong-gun come in. The two are experts in these kinds of cases, and it being a great business deal for them, they are all ears to what Hua Rim has to say. Hua Rim goes on to explain that Kim has to excavate Mr. Park's grandfather's grave, situated on a remote mountain near the North Korean border. Kim and Yong-gun's eyes are fixated on the prize and not the job description, so they unhesitatingly join in on the mission. The next day, the four team up and immediately begin to solve the case. Oh. At first, Kim has an uneasy feeling about the whole process, but he ignores it. Just then, Park shows up in Korea and insists that under no circumstances is the coffin to be opened. Instead, they must carry out a cremation as soon as possible. He claims his reason is that his parents and all other relatives do not like the idea. However, Mr. Park says he will do anything necessary to save his child and ensure his well-being. Kim then asks him about his grandfather, to which Park proves to be very evasive. He avoids the topic, appearing to be hiding something. He leads them up a mountaintop where foxes are everywhere around. To Kim, it is diabolical that foxes and graves should exist together. To him, it is never a good thing for them to be paired together. Looking at the tombstone, there is no name on it, only some cryptic annotations. Kim finds this odd and points out how strange it is that someone from such a rich family would have such a plain tombstone. Park explains that the grandfather was a great man who did a lot for their country, while Jun, a monk, suggested this gravesite. He further clarifies that the simplicity of the tombstone was intentional, to protect it from grave robbers. Still unsatisfied with the explanation, Kim makes an unexpected exit and goes to sit down in his car. The others follow him to inquire about the sudden drop of countenance and awkward exit. Kim then opens up about feeling unsettled about the place. He claims it is too weird to be a grave, and he senses a bad omen, almost like evil lurks. Kim proceeds to warn the group about touching anything there, as that might put everyone's life in danger. Hwa Rim pleads with Kim not to give up so soon. She worries about the child's well-being and hopes to save him. She suggests that they could neutralize the curses by performing the rituals of moving the grave. After various attempts to try and convince Kim, he finally agrees reluctantly. The next day, the group are on the mountain and are busy exhuming the grave. Hwa Rim and Bong Gil prepare a ritual with 5 pigs and 5 workers of the same birth year. The idea is to distract any evil spirits present and, at the same time, assist in the digging. Meanwhile, Park is in shock as he sees his elderly aunt, who has come to witness her father's exhumation. As they begin digging, Bong Gil chants ceremonially, while Hwa Rim performs an eccentric dance. The pigs are slain and used as sacrifices, and eventually, the coffin is found by the laborers. Everything goes on smoothly, and according to plan, until one of the workers discovers a peculiar snake with a human head. He instantly decapitates it with a shovel. It's an unsettling scene, and it becomes more concerning when it screams like a human. The weather suddenly changes, and it begins to pour heavily. Kim tells Park that they would have to delay the cremation due to the weather, and Park does not object to Kim's decision. The coffin is then moved to the funeral home of Yonggun for the night. Later, Kim visits a village nearby and asks a monk about Jun, but the monk has never heard of such an individual named Jun. Then, Kim proceeds to ask about the mountain tomb. The monk tells him that a rumor says that it contains treasure, and, as a result, has attracted many grave robbers to the site so very often. Then, the monk shows Kim some of the items left by these robbers, which he has still kept in his temple. As Kim carefully examines the leftovers of the robbers, the inquisitive monk asks Kim why he is so interested in the grave. Kim turns around to the monk and tells him that he had dug the grave earlier. The monk then asks Kim if he found any treasure there. The scene instantly cuts back to the funeral home. There, one of the caretakers, intrusive and curious, slowly approaches the coffin and opens it. Yonggun is nowhere near the premises, as he is out having dinner somewhere else. Hwa Rim and Bong Gil don't arrive in time to stop the man, and he pushes the coffin lid open. The atmosphere becomes instantly eerie, and the spirit is now set free, as it emerges from the coffin and straight to Hwa Rim. Coming in contact with it, Hwa Rim immediately collapses into unconsciousness. The caretaker, realizing what he has done, stealthily makes his way out of the room, leaving Bong Gil and an unconscious Hwa Rim all alone with no help. Hwa Rim is eventually rushed to the hospital, and the others, upon hearing about what happened, make their way to her. They find Hwa Rim in a critical condition, and it is not looking good for her or them. She's bleeding from her nose, and even frustrated by her condition. Kim and Yonggun just stare at her. Meanwhile, back in LA, Park's disabled father hears his own father's voice ordering him to open a window. He does, and the spirit's image appears in the glass, extracting his organs. It is a gruesome sight, and the old man does not survive the outcome. On the other hand, Park's mother is busy dancing and watching TV in another room. She is also attacked by this spirit. It's a tragedy, as none of the two survive this encounter with the spirit. We turn our attention back to Korea, where Hwa Rim performs a ritual whereby the spirit of the grandfather is invoked into Bong Gil's body to understand his motive. It works, and Bong Gil becomes possessed. He is in a jealous fit because the family has excluded him from their lives, and this has made him feel neglected. The spirit declares it will leave only after wiping out all its descendants, expressing its rage over its family's negligence. Meanwhile, Park receives a call from Kim. Kim informs him of his grandfather's spirit intent to destroy the bloodline. At this moment, there's a knock on the door, and the caller, who claims to be Kim, sternly instructs Park not to open the door no matter what. He, however, instructs Park to open the window, claiming that his grandfather's spirit will protect him. Poor Park believes this and invites the spirit in. Less than a few minutes later, the real Kim bursts into the room. He finds Park behaving very strangely, and it dawns on him that he is already possessed. Mr. Park is jabbering about the Japanese language. Before this moment, he did not know, and as Kim watches him closely, he suddenly bleeds from his mouth, frightening the hotel employee in the room. Kim is also terrified by this unsettling display of Mr. Park, and he immediately instructs the hotel staff to call for an ambulance. While Mr. Kim awaits the ambulance, Mr. Park is still in full display of abnormality. He gulps down multiple bottles of water, and Kim just looks on in concern. As Mr. Park continues to speak gibberish, he suddenly begins to tilt his neck awkwardly to Kim. Kim looks troubled as he can only observe the scene. Mr. Park continues to twist his neck until it snaps and he falls. There's a loud thud as Mr. Park hits the ground. Kim looks over at Mr. Park's corpse, and just then, he sees his grandfather's reflection on the glass in front of him. It slowly fades away until it completely disappears. With no other choice, and almost at the point of despair, the shamans realize that the only shot they have at stopping the raging spirit is by cremating the grave. Everyone is tense. It's all hands on deck now. Meanwhile, back in the US, the spirit has made its way to Mr. Park's son, who is the next target on his list. Sang-gak contacts Park's aunt. It's an urgent matter now, and Kim asks for permission to cremate her father's remains immediately. There's no time to waste and lives are at stake. In a bid to convince the woman, Kim emphasizes that it is the only way to finally put an end to the spirit's rampaging. The woman is quiet and gentle over the phone as she listens to Kim speak. His tone is desperate and urgent, but she doesn't give a response yet. It's tense as Kim patiently awaits her response. The woman hopes that there could be another way out, but unfortunately, there isn't. She takes her time to think it through, and then to Kim's relief, she obliges. The group then successfully cremates the grandfather's remains, along with the coffin. The group can only watch and hope as the fire continues to burn the coffin. At the same time, the spirit attacking the baby in the hospital begins to feel the effect of the cremation occurring back in Korea. The spirit screams in agony, and then it vanishes completely into the darkness. Feeling triumphant over the evil spirit, the group returns to their normal lives. There's a sense of calm and everyone takes a breather from the overwhelming encounter. Mr. Park's wife rushes to her son, and he appears safe and sound. A month later, Sang-gak receives a call from one of the workers who had decapitated that strange snake at the grave spot some time ago. Ever since the incident, the worker has not been the same, moving from one torment to the next. Kim goes to visit him and he finds him in a bad state. The man pleads with Kim to make arrangements for the snake to be given a proper burial. He fears his life will only continue to turn out for the worse if he doesn't. In the next scene, Sang-gak goes back to the site of the burial and starts digging. He finds the snake, which is alive after being decapitated, and is further shocked to find another coffin beneath it. The coffin he finds is so big that it can hold more than one body if positioned vertically. Terrified, Sang-gak calls the rest of the group at once onto the mountaintop. They go upwards and are shocked to see this thick and high coffin wrapped up in chains. The group teamed up to extract it, dragging it down the forest. The sun is setting, and the foxes are lurking, but they manage to get the coffin out. They get it on their vehicles and drive out steadily with the coffin carefully placed at the back. Hwa Rim and Bong Gil have no idea where they are headed, but just follow Kim behind quietly. Kim takes them to the local monk, the one whom Kim had consulted before. Kim rushes out of his car and meets the monk outside. Kim informs him that they need a place to stay, and they also need a solution for the mysterious coffin. They carefully place the coffin, and Hwa Rim begins preparations for the cremation. She sends Bong Gil on an errand to fetch some items she would need for the whole process. Later, Park's aunt arrives at the scene. She too is left stunned by the appearance of this strange and odd-looking coffin. Kim immediately starts to question her. He asks her questions about all the strange and sudden occurrences and discoveries. She tells them all that she can, and instructs Kjim to take care of the coffin. Following this, Kim begins to put the pieces together. He comes to the realization that Mr. Park's grandfather was a collaborator with the Japanese during the Japanese-Korean War, and that this collaboration assured his vast fortune. Further theorizes that because of this betrayal, the grandfather received this punishment and such a cursed burial. To shed more light on the issue, the aunt reveals that the Japanese were, in fact, the monk Jun himself. She expresses her confusion as to why her father, who was loyal to the Japanese, would be buried in such a cursed location. Later, their host, the monk, offers the group a bowl of noodles for dinner. They all eat and relax, briefly forgetting about all their troubles. The five of them dine and then head to bed. A big day ahead of them as they plan to cremate the coffin by the next day. As they all sleep later that night, Hwa Rim makes a phone call while alone in her car. The atmosphere is eerie and unsettling as she speaks on the phone. There's a constant sound of a dog whining in the distance, and this just adds to the gloomy atmosphere. Meanwhile, as Bong Gil sleeps, he has a disturbing nightmare of a strange persona, complaining about some stolen livers. Bong Gil manages to wake up breathing heavily and covered in sweat. He gets up and goes outside, where he begins to hear strange noises, like that of a pig. Bong Gil follows the sound to the pig shed, where he sees a large number of pigs. Just then he sees, afar in the darkness, a giant mysterious figure in the distance devouring the body of the monk. Bong Gil is terrified by this sight, and he immediately hides from this figure. He then makes his way to Hua Rim's car where Hua Rim is lying fast asleep. His loud presence alone wakes her up, and as he pants heavily, he signals Hua Rim to follow him right away. As Hua Rim is about to make her way out of the vehicle to follow Bong Gil, a strange hand holds her back as if telling her it's a wrong decision to step out of the car. Hua Rim follows Bong Gil regardless. When they arrive, they find the coffin empty. The stench of the place hits them from the door, and the whole place is covered in blood. Hua Rim instructs Bong Gil to go and wake the others up immediately, and Bong Gil rushes to do so quickly. As Bong Gil leaves, Hua Rim carefully examines the place. Suddenly she hears footsteps approaching, and a massive samurai arrives at the scene. It stands by the door and begins to call an unfamiliar name. Hua Rim bends low as she attempts to hide from this strange being. The creature then demands Hua Rim's identity in Japanese. Hua Rim pretends to be its subordinate, and initially, the samurai believes her and asks for its sweet fish. However, he soon sees through her ruse and instantly attacks Hua Rim. Hua Rim immediately flees from the being, running out of the barn, but the creature closely follows her. Luckily, Bong Gil arrives just in time, and he attacks the creature, pushing a long blade through its tummy. However, this has little to no effect, and in retaliation, the samurai attacks Bong Gil, severely injuring him. Hua Rim just watches from a distance in horror, unable to do anything to help Bong Gil. Bong Gil is defeated and he falls to the ground. The samurai then makes its way to Hua Rim. The others arrive but just in time to see the samurai in full display. It transforms into a fireball and captivates the whole place. Everyone just watches this show by the samurai, and as it continues to move in the circle of fire, it goes up into the sky and disappears, never to be seen again, so they hope. Dawn slowly approaches, and Hua Rim rushes to Bong Gil, who is still hurt and lying on the floor in agony. Hua Rim screams for Kim and Yonggun to help, but they just stand there motionless, like they have seen a ghost. Well, maybe they have. The scene shifts to the hospital where Bong Gil is getting treatment. The authorities on the news have found some bodies in horrific conditions, but Hua Rim doesn't pay much attention to this. Kim comes to comfort her. He sits by her side and listens to her talk. He understands her struggle and pain, and he is willing to offer her the littlest support he can, even if it's just to listen. Hoping for Bong Gil's recovery, Hua Rim invites some of their friends to the hospital to pray for him. Hua Rim begins her research because Bong Gil is now possessed. She learns that the samurai was left there in a battle many centuries ago. Kim goes back to the grave and realizes that the grave robbers he learned about earlier were actually Korean patriots. They were trying to rediscover the samurai's conquest in Korea. As they continue to pray for him, he wakes up but then begins to speak strangely. As a result of the strange spirit over him, Bong Gil's words are disturbing, and Hua Rim immediately puts him back to sleep. Meanwhile, Kim, who had gone back to investigate the gravesite, made another unsettling discovery. Kim goes to tell Yonggun that he has found something strange underneath the grave again. Sick of the repeated cycle, Yonggun asks Kim why he even bothered to go back there in the first place. Kim says that before Mr. Park passed, he made a statement that the fox cut the king and putting the pieces together once more, and he might have finally figured it all out and come to a final solution. There is one more mission for the group. Everyone regroups with a plan to find the pole that tethers the ghoul here, and they head into the mountain. At midnight, the ghoul comes alive, and Hua Rim makes a plan to distract him. When she fails, even with the protection of her grandmother, Kim and Yonggun dig for the pole, which they cannot find. Kim then realizes that the pole is inside the ghoul's body, and he uses his knowledge of the elements to take it down. The group is victorious, and Bong Gil recovers. As time moves on, they all get back to their normal lives. A grand ceremony reunites the group after so long, Kim's daughter's wedding. During the event, they come together for a group photograph, and then the movie ends.